It is midnight in Washington, 5 in London, and 2 on a Monday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Gun-young. Let's get a check of the main stories we're following at this hour. South Korea and the United States will begin their annual joint military drills on February 24th in the midst of inter-Korean reunions for families separated by the Korean War, scheduled to start Thursday. Now, no tolerance for any attempts by labor unions to scuttle the government's drive to reform the public sector, says President Park Geun-hye, warning she will not allow any lax management at debt-ridden public institutions. And it's day 4 of the 2014 Winter Olympics in the Russian resort city of Sochi. From an opening ceremony that was extravagant and extraordinary in many ways, to events that made headlines over the weekend and medals to anticipate for Team Korea, we have the latest from Sochi. But first, let us begin right here on the Korean peninsula. Now, South Korea has announced the dates for its upcoming military drills with the United States. But will they be threatened by the fact that they coincide with the two Koreas' planned resumption of reunions for families separated by the Korean War? Well, ARIRANG News Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee has this report.
South Korea and the United States will begin their annual joint military drills in the last week of February, a plan that could jeopardize an earlier inter-Korean agreement to resume long-suspended reunions for families separated by the Korean War.
The ROK U.S. Combined Forces Command will hold the Key Resolve exercises, an annual defense training drill, from February 24th to March 6th. We also plan to hold the Foal Eagle exercises, which also take place every year from February 24th to April 18th.
The dates coincide with the upcoming family reunions, scheduled for February 20th to the 25th at North Korea's Mount Kumgang Resort. The Defense Ministry said Pyongyang was informed of the dates on Sunday, but has not yet reacted to the plans. North Korea has, however, previously threatened to scrap the reunions should the South go ahead with the military exercises.
We're clearly stating that dialogue and invasive war games can never coexist, nor can reconciliation and conflict.
South Korea's Unification Ministry reiterated Monday the drills involving tens of thousands of troops are defensive in nature and should not disrupt plans for family reunions.
We have repeatedly explained that the Key Resolve exercises are annual defense training drills that will be conducted separately from the family reunion event. The South Korean government thinks the reunions must take place as planned, no matter what.
Millions of Koreans were separated from their families during the Korean War more than 6 decades ago, and some 70,000 South Koreans, most of whom are now in their 80s, are on a waiting list to see their loved ones one last time. Amid the uncertainty, South Korea has been preparing for the reunion event since last week. The Unification Ministry said that although Mount Kumgang saw over 1 meter of snow over the weekend, snowplows sent by South Korea have already removed most of the snow that's accumulated at the prospective reunion site. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
Meanwhile, earlier on this Monday at the National Assembly, South Korea's Defense Minister Kim Kwon-jin told lawmakers that the preparations at North Korea's main underground nuclear site in Punggye-ri appear to be complete. However, there is no sign that a test is imminent. Now, South Korea's rival parties are debating how to go about achieving reunification with North Korea at the National Assembly on this Monday. On the second day of a 4-day hearing, lawmakers are questioning members of President Park's cabinet about the government's specific plans for reunification. Now, in a press conference last month, the president said a unified Korea would be like hitting the jackpot. Ruling party lawmakers support President Park's reunification rhetoric and projects such as creating a world peace park in the demilitarized zone. However, opposition lawmakers say they oppose reunification where the South absorbs the North following an abrupt collapse and are calling for public consensus on how to achieve reunification. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is scheduled to be here in Seoul this week to discuss the inter-Korean situation and pending bilateral issues. Now, Seoul's foreign ministry said Monday that Kerry will spend the first 2 days of a 6-day trip to Asia and the Middle East that starts Thursday in South Korea. He is expected to meet with Seoul's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and discuss ways for the countries to expand their cooperation on regional and global issues and continue their close coordination on North Korea. Now, analysts say the two will also likely discuss ways to prevent possible provocations from the North during upcoming annual training exercises between the militaries of the two countries slated for late this month. Now, this is Kerry's first visit to South Korea since his last visit in April. A delegation from a South Korean consortium will visit North Korea this week for a field study on a joint railway project between Pyongyang and Moscow. Now, watchers say that although North Korea continues to call on Seoul to halt its upcoming joint military drills with Washington, there are signs Pyongyang wants to try to get along. Connie Kim reports.
The South Korean delegation's visit to the north comes amid steadily increasing hopes once chilly ties between the Koreas are beginning to warm. A South Korean government official said Sunday that 18 officials from the state-run rail operator Korail, steelmaker POSCO, and Hyundai Merchant Marine will visit North Korea's northeastern port city of Najin for a field study for 3 days from Tuesday. The South Korean consortium will fly to North Korea from Vladivostok with Russian officials also taking part in the project. The envisioned 54-kilometer railway line will run between the Russian border town of Hasan and the North Korean port city of Najin. South Korea's involvement represents part of President Park Geun-hye's push to link energy and logistics infrastructure across the continent. She agreed to support the joint railway project during summit talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Seoul in November last year. The North's recent peace offensive comes despite Pyongyang's recent call on Seoul to halt its upcoming joint military drills with the U.S. North Korea issued a statement last Thursday saying that reconciliation and provocations cannot coexist, using the example of the upcoming inter-Korean family reunions, which are due to start next week, and the drills, which Pyongyang says are practice for war. Amid the slow warming of ties, the two Koreas also agreed last Friday to establish an internet network at the joint Kaesong Industrial Complex. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
All of the day's important events. Events close to home, around the world.
Second half blast figure out what winners.
The arts and culture scene and the heart of global business.
Experts added that
ARIRANG News has your whole day covered.
the legislature will convene a plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring.
President Park Geun-hye again called for reforms at public companies and sent a strong warning to anyone who tries to sabotage the reforms. Now, during a meeting of the president's senior secretaries this Monday morning, President Park criticized state-owned companies for their lax management and called for reform. She pointed out that a number of public enterprises that are deeply in debt have still offered their employees excessive benefits, even covering the tuition at foreign universities for some of their employees' children. Now, the Korean leader pledged to hold responsible anyone who tries to sabotage the reforms and said she is particularly concerned about a recent move by unionists at some of the firms to oppose them. She said the public companies need to regain the public trust by being proactive with their reform plans. Meanwhile, the Korean government is aiming to toughen penalties on companies found leaking client data or using it to advance their businesses. This is the latest measure in the government's response to the largest ever personal information leak that still has many rattled. Our UDN has the details.
The ruling Saenuri Party and government financial agencies have unveiled a proposal for a set of preventive measures designed to prevent future data leaks. This as the nation continues to cope with the fallout from the massive leak of personal information from the country's 3 major credit card companies last month. The proposed plan strengthens the penalties on financial institutions found guilty of leaking or illegally distributing client information to third parties. Under the plan, those found guilty of leaking information would face up to 10 years in prison or a fine of $470,000. That's 3 years longer and 10 times the amount of the current penalties. In addition, those found guilty of using client data to enhance their business activities would be forced to pay a fine that's equivalent to up to 1% of their net sales. Going forward, financial companies and institutions would be required to delete client data within 5 years of a client's last transaction. The proposal must now go through the National Assembly, but if passed, will be implemented starting in the second half of the year. Last month's credit information leak was the third largest in global history, with 104 million people affected. Korean cardholders who hold 4 credit cards each on average were hit especially hard by the leak, which prompted more than 2.5 million people to cancel cards or have them reissued. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
And now taking a brief look at the local market. Seoul shares were little changed in early trading on this Monday as investors digested a mixed U.S. jobs report and cautiously awaited key events this week, with offshore investors turning net sellers again after a pause late last week. Now, as of 1:30 p.m. Korea time, the benchmark Kospi was up nearly 0.1% at 1924 after touching a one-week intraday high of 1929, while the Tech Kosdaq was also trading in positive territory by 0.7%. On the foreign exchange counter, the Korean currency was trading stronger against the greenback at 1,072 won. Now, Iran has agreed to take further steps over the next 3 months to ease fears over its nuclear program. The deal reached between Tehran and the International Atomic Energy Agency on Sunday lays out several practical measures, but does not include a visit to the Parchin military site, which the West and Israel suspects has been used as a nuclear bomb testing site. Kim Min-ji reports.
Iran has agreed to take more steps to diffuse international concern over its nuclear program. After 2 days of technical talks in Tehran, Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency reached an agreement Sunday on 7 practical measures to be implemented by May 15th. Among the new measures aimed at enhancing transparency over Iran's nuclear motives and suspicions of its past work on atomic weapons, Iran has promised to provide information about why it wants to develop detonators. The IAEA is probing into possible military elements to Tehran's nuclear work, something Iran has denied. Iran will also provide managed access to the Sakhan uranium mine in Yazd, which is believed to produce some 60 tons of powdered uranium a year. Other steps include providing information and managed access to the Ardakan concentration plant and following the IAEA safety recommendations for the IR-40 reactor, which is capable of producing plutonium. The deal, however, does not permit inspections of the Parchin military site, which has long been suspected of being a nuclear bomb testing site. The latest development comes as Iran is set to return to the negotiating table for talks with the P5+1 nations of the U.S., Russia, China, France, Britain, and Germany this month to strike a permanent nuclear agreement, following the framework for cooperation that was agreed between the parties in November last year. Under that deal, Tehran promised to cease all enrichment above 5%, neutralize its stockpile near 20%, and give greater access to nuclear inspectors in exchange for relief from partial economic sanctions. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
And that's all from me at this hour. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with more of the day's latest at 4 p.m. Korea time. See you then.